Welcome back, everybody. Allow me to introduce the final presentation for today's Connecting Renewable Energies Conference New South Wales from BlueFloat Energy. I would like to welcome to the platform and introduce you to Nick Sankey. Nick is the Country Manager of BlueFloat Energy, responsible for offshore wind project developments in Australia by leading the development of projects from site screening through to final investment decision and beyond. Nick manages site selection, consenting, development planning, and establishes them and maintains the relationships with strategic partners and key local stakeholders. Nick has worked in the energy sector for over 20 years developing financial, energy and infrastructure projects. Please welcome to the platform, Nick Sankey.
Thanks very much, Nicola, and good afternoon, everybody. Yes, I'm the country manager for BlueFloat Energy. And I'd like to run you through some details about our two New South Wales projects. We actually have four offshore wind projects under development in Australia, two in Victoria, two in New South Wales. Today I'll be focusing on the New South Wales projects. So BlueFloat Energy is a European-based offshore wind developer, and in Australia we have formed a partnership with Energy Estate. I believe Simone has just spoken from Energy Estate, so I won't spend too long in introducing Energy Estate. They're Australian-based accelerator and developer of green ecosystems. BlueFloat is an offshore wind specialist and is active in around about 10 countries globally. We have currently over 22 gigawatts of projects under development. These are all development projects at the moment, and they're all offshore wind. A lot of the projects are based in Europe, in the UK, Spain, Italy, France, and recently have branched out into South America, into Colombia, and also Asia Pacific, as you can see, Taiwan, Australia, and New Zealand. Australia comprises 6.2 gigawatts of development projects. And that's across the four sites that we have. So you can see Australia is very important to BlueFloat globally, being a significant part of the overall development platform. BlueFloat's recent success was in the ScotWind seabed lease auctions. They were completed late last year. It was a highly competitive auction process, and BlueFloat, in partnership with Falck Renewables and also Ørsted, was successful in securing 3 seabed sea rights for offshore wind projects. I believe Simone has introduced Energy Estate. We see the partnership of BlueFloat and Energy Estate being very strong, bringing together BlueFloat's technical development expertise in offshore wind and Energy Estate's community engagement, stakeholder management, and local networks. Energy Estate has a much broader business than the offshore wind, but offshore wind is seen as a very important part of the Energy Estate business, which is developing ecosystems which combine solar, wind, storage systems, and looking at various green energy ecosystems. So getting to the projects, the first project I'd like to talk about is the Hunter Coast Offshore Wind Project. So the Hunter Coast project is located 25 kilometres off the New South Wales coast and situated in between Newcastle and Gosford. Extends out to around about 55 kilometres. We're proposing 110 floating wind turbines and 3 offshore substations, also likely to be floating. That's a total generation capacity of 1.65 gigawatts. Why floating? Floating is seen as the best technology to be used off the coast of New South Wales due to the water depth. We're looking at water depths between around about 100 metres and up to 250 metres. We extend right out to the edge of the continental shelf, so we've pushed as far away from the coast as we can, down out to the shelf. When you go out further from where our site is, you start to get rapidly increasing water depths, going to 1 kilometre and more of water depths. When you get to around about 60 to 70 metres of water, that's the inflection point between being able to develop a fixed bottom site where the towers are actually embedded into the seabed and floating sites. So our towers and turbines and blades will sit on top of individual floating platforms which are tethered to the seabed through mooring lines. We're currently considering turbine capacity between around 15 to 20 megawatts. Currently, the largest turbine commercially available for offshore wind is 15 megawatts, but there's been rapid advancements over the years. We recognise that we're not going to be procuring turbines for another few years, and we do expect that advancements in turbine technology will continue to be, we're anticipating around about an 18 or 20 megawatt turbine being available in a few years' time. To give you a sense of the perspective of the turbines, the hub heights, the actual turbine will sit up to around about 190 metres above the water. Each blade is around about 130 metres long, so you've got a total diameter going out to around about 275 metres. It sits around about 40 to 50 metres off the sea. Each turbine is placed approximately around about 2 kilometres apart. We run 66 kV cable array between each of the turbines on the site, and then they collect into one of the 3 substations, and then from the substations we run a 330 kV cable onshore. We're proposing an onshore landing near Munmora, running under Lake Munmora into the Munmora switchyard. And this the project is within the zone, the Hunter Region zone of that the New South Wales government is looking at. Although our site area is in the Commonwealth Territory, which I'll explain a little bit later. That's a diagram of the site, sitting there roughly 25 kilometres from the shore, reaching out to 55 metres. That's the site investigation area that we're currently conducting our environmental analysis around, and the aqualines are the transmission cables running ashore. We appreciate that the visual amenity is a key issue for communities, and that's very much on our mind when we're looking at the site locations that we're proposing. So we have a project website which is detailed there, and we've loaded on that a visual simulation. So we went down to the beaches along the site area. We've gone to 10 places and taken panoramic landscape photos. So these are actual photos of the coast. And then we have simulated what the turbines will look like at each point in time. Being 25 kilometres from the coast, they are visible, but they are very much on the horizon. Everyone is welcome to access the project website and have a play around in there and have a look at the simulation. We've also done this for our Greater Gippsland site down in Victoria. Moving on to the Wollongong Offshore Wind Project. This project is located just south of Wollongong. It's 14 kilometres off the coast, extending out to 35 kilometres. We're proposing 105 floating turbines with 3 offshore substations, so it's a total generation capacity of 1.575 gigawatts. This site is slightly closer to the shore, that being driven by the continental shelf, which comes in a lot closer around Wollongong compared to in Newcastle. Similar to the Hunter Coast project, our site sits right out to where the continental shelf drops down. Similarly to Hunter Coast, we're proposing the same turbines between 15 and 20 megawatts, and they have the same specifications and diameters that I spoke about at Hunter Coast. Our grid connection is proposed to be into Dapto. So sitting below Wollongong, we're proposing to come onshore and then run a transmission line into the existing Dapto substation. We've got 2 alternative pathways identified, and we're continuing to investigate which is the preferable option for the onshore works. This site sits within the New South Wales government's Illawarra res, but once again, the actual site is within Commonwealth Territory. So our engagement approach, BlueFloat and Energy Estate share the same view, that a very open, early and transparent engagement with all stakeholders, all communities and traditional owners. So to date, we've undertaken a range of stakeholder engagement, particularly across the government area for local, state, Commonwealth governments, and also the various areas within government, including Energy Co, DQ, and also local councils. We have strong engagement with the regulatory bodies for the offshore wind industry. It's NOPTA and NOPSEMA. And we're beginning our discussion in industry to assess supply chain opportunities. So being a very new industry, there is no current existing supply chain for offshore wind in Australia. There is a supply chain for onshore wind, but the scale of offshore wind is significantly larger than you see for the onshore wind projects. So developing supply chain and ensuring that there's the right skills and workforce available is critically important for us to develop our projects. We're also very much engaged with community groups, advocacy groups, unions, business groups, just to ensure that we're hearing the wide range of views about our project and making sure that there's opportunities for everyone to be engaged and to participate in our projects. To that end, we're holding community engagement drop-in sessions. These are coming up in a couple of weeks' time, and we'll also hold a public webinar. So these are important for us to reach out to anyone who has an interest in the project, who wants to ask questions, who wants to voice some opinions, and we're keen to hear all views on offshore wind. This is very similar to the community engagement drop-in sessions that we recently held down in Gippsland for our Greater Gippsland project. Just a quick overview on the Offshore Electricity Infrastructure Act. So at the moment, we're sitting right at the top of this snake diagram. So we've the Offshore Electricity Infrastructure Act is a federal Commonwealth Government Act. So at 3 nautical miles from the coast, the waters go from state to Commonwealth territory. So all of our sites in Australia are in Commonwealth territory. We need to obtain licenses from the Commonwealth Government in order to have an offshore wind farm. The process is working that there's the Commonwealth Government declares areas that they believe are suitable for development of offshore wind projects. There's only been one area so far that has been announced as being investigated, and that's in Gippsland. Public consultation for that area has now closed, and the government is now making an assessment of the area. We expect by the end of the year that the government will be declaring the Gippsland zone, and that paves the way for opening up licence applications. So the first step is to apply for a feasibility licence, where developers outline their site areas and apply for the feasibility licences, which then gives an exclusive right to that area of seabed in order to deploy monitoring equipment and undertake more invasive studies. Developers have then got a 7-year period in which to turn that feasibility license into a commercial license, and that's primarily by completing all of the environmental analysis and approvals and developing a management plan that is accepted by the government and paves the way forward to going into construction, which typically takes around about 2 years before the operations period of around about 30 years. So in terms of the New South Wales projects, we're working hard on completing desktop environmental analysis. We're looking at any major environmental issues that we'll be facing and developing our plans for how we can mitigate and or working up the further studies that we need to undertake. This is part of a large study program that we're working with the government on developing. So once we submit the EPBC Act referral, we'll then develop into a formal study program of how we progress to getting our environmental approvals. We're continuing to do technical design activities. So we're looking at electrical design, foundation designs, transportation installation design. And this is all in preparation for the formal declaration of the Hunter region by the Commonwealth Government. So there's been no announcement of the formal timing of when the area will be outlined, like Gippsland was, but we believe it will be done fairly soon. Whilst we're waiting for that outline and the community consultation and the formal declaration of the zone, we continue our community engagement program through our drop-in sessions, webinars, and being out in the community, meeting with government and stakeholders. So offshore wind does take quite a while to develop. We've completed our site selection analysis, and we're now in the feasibility stage, which can take probably around about 5 years. Being a new industry in Australia, it probably the first projects will take a little bit longer before processes are well developed. Once we've completed our feasibility and obtained a commercial license, we reach the FID point, where we can then move into a construction period of around about 2 to 3 years. Which then provides for at least 30 years of operation, followed by decommissioning. So we're very excited about New South Wales and our 2 projects there. They're 2 of 4 projects that we're developing around Australia, and we see lots of opportunities for local suppliers and for local content within our projects. There's a lot of work packages that will be available over time. We're not at the stage of awarding any work yet. We have to do our design analysis and start working on our approval. So it'll be some time before reaching out formally to supply chain. But there's turbine and blades procurement, there's tower manufacturing, foundations, substation constructions, cable manufacturing. So there's a lot of steel and concrete within our projects. There's a big demand for electricians, engineers, for welders. So there's significant work packages which is across these large infrastructure projects. And alongside that, there's also complementary work on ports that needs to be undertaken. So ports are very important for offshore wind. So in terms of the work for the state, there's significant opportunities available. And that's about it for what I wanted to talk about today.
Thanks so much, Nick. Thanks. That was really informative. If anybody would like to meet with Nick, please head to the BlueFloat Energy booth. Nick, I know you have to run away at 2 p.m, so please don't hesitate to jump on and engage with Nick and talk to him all about the projects in the Hunter and BlueFloat Energy. Thanks, Nick.
Thanks very much.